Chapter 5. My brother tried to warn those who command him about the monster. My brother had remembered our grandfather's words. Those in charge did not believe him, did not want to listen to our grandfather's warnings. But my brother did not speak of a matter of belief. He spoke of truth. Truth may or may not be believed, but that does not alter truth. Truth is. Speakers of truth understand that. They also understand that truth always wins. But sometimes with the winning comes death. The sun was low in the pale blue sky, just an orange ball above the western hills, but the day's heat still covered everything like a thick blanket on a warm night. Private Nathaniel Clowes held his M16 in ready position across his chest as he crouched near the front of the tank. Sweat dripped off his forehead and he could feel it soaking his undershirt. It would be a relief when the cool of the night finally arrived. He wiped his face with the back of his hand, his knuckles scraping against the cap he had worn backwards since he got out of boot camp. It was his signature, his way of being different in this place where conformity was prized. A number of commanders had tried to get him to wear a regulation hat, but he never did. All of the commanders learned, quickly, not to make the cap an issue. It was one of the few things that Clowes felt strongly about. Right now the cap felt like a talisman. Something was making him uneasy here, something he couldn't quite put a finger on. Neither could his partner, Corporal Ryan. At least that was what Ryan had said as they approached the tank. But their voices had dropped to whispers, and finally they stopped speaking altogether. Ryan was beside the tank now, holding his own M16 muzzle upward as he inspected the scrub-covered sand and the small stand of trees. Clowes glanced at him. Ryan shrugged, meaning he had found nothing. Yet. Ryan was a tall, thin kid who had just joined up right out of high school. He had reddish-brown hair, chopped short, and brown eyes that seemed always to have a touch of humour in them. He could pull practical jokes with the best of them. Clowes knew that all too well, since he had been the butt of a number of them. But Ryan didn't seem to be in a joking mood now. He had his head tilted back slightly, as if he were trying to identify something by smell. If anyone could do that, Ryan could. He was from the woods of Oregon and had been raised to hunt. Clowes had been raised in West Texas and knew a bit about hunting himself. In fact, it was while telling hunting stories that the two men had become friends. They were planning to take their next 2 leaves together as part of a bet. Ryan said hunting was better in Oregon. Clowes claimed it was better in Texas. They would go to Oregon first, Texas second. And when those 2 leaves were over, Clowes knew he would have $50 of Ryan's money. Nothing, especially not a spotted owl-filled rainforest, beat West Texas. The wind shifted slightly, and Clowes winced. Something smelled wrong, but he'd caught only a sense of it, not a full-fledged sniff. He held his gun tighter. He and Ryan were alone, though. Clowes had an intuition about that, and it rarely failed him. He didn't know how he'd tell the Sarge that they couldn't locate Deetle. Sarge didn't like anything untidy. Clowes was willing to give this search an extra effort just to avoid the sergeant's wrath. Not that they had finished examining the area. They hadn't even been to the other side of the tank yet. This whole assignment had Clowes nervous. The Sarge had pulled him aside, him, not Ryan, and warned him to take all precautions. Then the Sarge had gotten just a hair too close to him, and whispered that he believed Private Deetle had been killed out here, and that he wanted them to investigate. Real hush-hush for the moment. He didn't tell Clowes what might have killed Deetle, and when asked, the Sarge had simply said, "Go look and you tell me." Clowes had asked Ryan if the Sarge had told him the same thing. Ryan merely looked at him with that cold, humorless gaze that he reserved for moments when someone asked him something stupid. "If the Sarge said it was hush-hush," Ryan had said, Then it's hush-hush. The only thing Clowes could conclude was that the Sarge didn't care if they worked together. He just wanted them to find whatever they could. Whatever that meant. Anything? Clowes asked softly. Nothing, Ryan said. But neither of them had moved from their positions. This tank had been manned nearly 24 hours a day since Clowes had been in camp. Having it now sit unmanned like this seemed almost unnatural and unnerving. The sun clipped the top of the nearby mesa, and the evening breeze kicked harder, swirling dust and hot air. The smell that had been teasing Clowes became a full-blown odour. The stench of rot and decay that brought Sarge's warning completely to mind. The smell instantly twisted Clowes' stomach, forcing him to swallow. "You smell that?" Ryan asked, moving slowly around in front of the tank. He still held his M16 upright, as if he had a flag hanging off it. Clowes wished Ryan would hold the damn thing properly. Something was wrong here, and it would be better if they were both prepared. "Yeah, I smell that." Clowes stood, but stayed in his position. "What the hell is that?" "Blood," Ryan said, pointing the barrel of his gun at the front of the tank. "And lots of it." Blood. Clowes felt his unease grow stronger, and that sixth sense of his was kicking up. There was something nearby, something watching them. He glanced over his shoulder, but saw nothing except more scrub and sand. Slowly, he walked forward, stopping beside Ryan. The stench was stronger here. It made Clowes' eyes water. He wiped them with his dirty left thumb, keeping a solid grip on his weapon with his right. "See?" Ryan asked. The fading sunlight bounced off the front of the tank, and Clowes had to squint in order to see. It took a moment for his eyes to adjust. Then he realized his eyes weren't the problem. What he was seeing as a shadow on the tank's front wasn't a shadow at all. It was blood. Black, dried blood covering most of the tank. Hundreds of flies were swarming in a thick puddle on the tank's top. "Shit," Clowes whispered. "If he bled that much," Ryan said, his voice trembling just a little, "where could he have gone?" Clowes took a step forward. Think of it as if the blood were not human. Think of it like he would if he were hunting. He peered at the area around the blood. A trail moved off towards the trees, a trail of spattered blood. This wasn't the trail left by something wounded running away to find a place of safety. This was a trail made by something else, carrying away the wounded. Nothing could bleed like that and move on its own. "Here." Clowes used his gun to point at the trail. Ryan stepped beside him, his voice naturally low. "You think maybe Nakai killed him?" Clowes looked at his partner. Ryan's brown eyes still had that flat look. "Is that what the Sarge told you?" "The Sarge told me to decide for myself." Apparently Ryan didn't think the information was worth hiding anymore. "Then do that," Clowes said. "Me? I don't have enough information. I want to find the body first, then wonder how he was killed." "You don't think this blood's Deetle's?" Ryan asked. "I don't think anything right now," Clowes said. "Let's just go." He realized, after he spoke, that Ryan had probably been asking questions as a way to stall, not wanting to follow a trail like that to look for the body of a man who had shared more than one beer with them. Ryan took a deep breath and went to the right of the blood trail. Clowes went to the left. They moved slowly, constantly scanning everything ahead and behind. Clowes had that strange sense of being watched, but he saw nothing. There weren't even scavengers in the trees. No vultures, no insects, nothing except the flies on the tank, far behind them. The shadows of the mesa had completely swallowed them by the time they reached the edge of the trees, 30 paces away. The blood trail stopped abruptly. Klaus stopped too, beside the last tree, and sighed. How could a trail just end? Could this thing get any stranger? Then he heard a faint buzzing. He raised his head. "Oh my God," Klaus said. "There he is." Almost directly above hung Private Dietl's body, or at least it was someone's body. In the shadows, it took Klaus a few seconds to understand exactly what he was looking at. The body was hanging from a rope tied around its feet. Every inch of skin had been peeled off, leaving muscles and intestines showing, now a reddish brown from the dried blood. The heart and lungs had been removed, and only the jawbone was left on the head. Something had removed the skull completely. Klaus took a step back, almost tripping over a bush. His stomach wanted to pour out of his chest, and every muscle in his body was telling him to turn and run. Only his army training kept him from doing just that. "I think I'm going to be sick," Ryan said softly, as he too backed away from the grisly sight. Hundreds of flies swarmed over the corpse, moving in and out of the chest cavity as if it were a hive. Klaus had skinned and hung his share of deer over the years, but he had no idea that a human could be skinned and hung too. There was one sick bastard running around out here, that much was for sure. One sick, strong bastard. It had taken some work to kill Dietl like that, and even more to string him up from that tree. Ryan choked, then coughed, but managed not to lose his dinner. Klaus moved over beside him, keeping his back on the body. "Are you all right?" Ryan took a deep breath of the hot, evening air, then nodded. Klaus did the same, ignoring the smell as best he could, and that damned feeling that they were not alone. It had to be a psychological reaction to the body. The trees were too far apart, and the scrub too small for anyone to hide here. A person could be seen from a long distance off. "Oh man," Ryan said. "What are we going to do?" "Report back to the Sarge," Klaus said. "They got to get a team out here before there's nothing left of this body." "Yeah," Ryan said, standing up straight and cradling his rifle in his arms. "Let's get the hell out of here." Suddenly, behind Ryan, came a sound like a knife snapping open. The snick was accompanied by a cold, almost metallic sound that seemed to have come out of thin air. Ryan started to turn, but then the air shimmered, and something huge and very sharp stabbed him in the back, lifting him off the ground like he was a child's toy. He didn't even have time to scream. Hot blood spattered over Klaus, covering him. He instinctively dove backward and away, rolling in the dirt. He came up into a crouch, his rifle ready. Ryan's body seemed to hang by itself in the air, held up by an unseen hand. He was clearly dead. Klaus opened up, firing on full automatic, spraying Ryan with bullets, hoping to hit whatever was behind him. Ryan's body moved in a strange dance, limbs jerking as the bullets hit them. The air shimmered behind Ryan, not once, but twice, as Klaus' shots went through him. Klaus guessed that the shimmer meant that the shots had hit their mark. If there was something behind Ryan, it had to be getting pissed, and if Klaus were getting pissed, he would... He saw the shimmer, and had half a second to react. He dove to the right, rolling as a blue bolt of energy scored the ground where he had been an instant before. Again he came up firing, spraying the air with a stream of bullets. "Show yourself, you chicken shit!" he shouted. Ryan's body dropped to the ground. This time, Klaus dove left, and was glad he did. Another blue streak had come out of the thin air, exploding into the dirt where he had been. This time, he came up from his tumble running, heading for the nearest rocks. He needed some cover, and he needed it quick. He heard the crackling of the shot before he felt it tear through his back and explode out of his chest. The force of the impact sent him flying forward. He tried to put his hands out to block his fall, but his arms didn't work anymore. And in the seconds before his head smashed into the desert rock, he realized that he and Ryan were part of a hunt. But not the kind of hunt they had planned for their leave. Clowes had never been prey before. And he finally, in the last moment of his life, understood why prey usually lost.